Hey, how's everybody today? This is a different way to start a Hippie Talks while he walks. But I wanted to introduce the subject matter of Sunday's video here on Saturday outside while I think of it. My talk coming up is my 16-year-old self. What would Gordy at 16 think about today's world? Not just the cannabis world we're in. I mean, that's a cool world. We are in a whole new environment. We're in a whole new area of life that I think is really cool. An area of a lot more freedom than we used to have. While there's political craziness that threatens to take away some of those freedoms. So it's a very interesting world, and I'm going to spend the rest of today jotting down little things that my 16-year-old self might think about different things. Let's do a compare. I don't want to spoil any of it because already a bunch of things are coming into my head, just like price of eating and having a little bit of fun. And yeah, there's so many things that have changed since this guy was 16. That's 42 years ago. Oh my goodness, I'm a whole middle-aged person older than my 16-year-old self. That's a neat way to think of it. So, friends, while I go out grocery shopping, peace and cheers, love and harmony, and look for someone without a smile today. Give them that smile of yours. I can see it. It's beautiful. Share it. Thinking one very important thing about my 16-year-old self was what I had hoped I would be at by the time I was 58, which I am now. That pie-eyed in-the-sky teenager who was a hippie then had always said, you know what, by the time I'm an old guy, I'm just going to be a guy who loves music, who doesn't love material things, who lives a quiet and sustainable lifestyle without making too much of a footprint on the world, and yet has many, many people who care about him and a big family. You know, I never saw myself as a business mogul or any of that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, throughout my career, I had to become a business guy. I had to be what I didn't want to be. By 25, I cut my hair short. And by 30, I was wearing suits all the time. And then I was in the business world, cutting jobs and being a capitalist. And yes, I'm still in my old age a right-winger. I never thought I would be. I was more liberal. Hang on, people. I was much more liberal back then. But life and circumstance and a better knowledge of economics and all that changed my political perspective a few times. But all the time that I was this boss at the railway, I kept thinking I was selling out my hippie self. You know, I had hidden it for so many years. But here I am, through some bad circumstance, you know, divorce and trouble and health. I have very little money. I live a very sustainable and quiet lifestyle. I'm where I thought I'd be. Yes, I took a 40-year break, but I'm where I thought I'd be, where I hoped I would be. So I'm a damn lucky man. More coming at you soon. Hey y'all, I hope you're enjoying today's theme that, as you can tell, started yesterday and it's finishing off here in my studio. I call it a studio, it's funny. Anyways, my 16-year-old self would be amazed at today's world. So many things have changed, some that I expected, some I did not. That's what this was all about. As you can tell from the beginning of this, my 16-year-old self would be happy with where I am right now, would maybe be surprised that I'm not well. I think he'd be surprised that I worked 40 years in an industry where I was wearing a suit and a tie and traveling all the time. I think he'd be surprised at some of the steps I've taken. But I truly am in a position now that I expected I would be. I really am. So, what are some of the other things that my 16-year-old self would be kind of, that's weird? Well, for sure, the cannabis world. My 16-year-old self would hide cannabis, usually not at home because I was so scared that somebody somehow would think on me and then my parents would get in trouble. We had special hiding places where we'd bury it, go back later. And no, we didn't have any way to mark down where you buried it. All you had for a notepad, really, well, there was paper, you know. But you know what I mean. Most of the time, what I did was I went to the reservoir, which was part way out of town, getting pretty remote from the city. And we would go find a special spot that we had of our own that was kind of hard to get to if we had more than a few joints. If we had enough that we wanted to protect it, that's where it went. And now I was walking across the street, toking on my trio, and walking right past a cop and waved at him. You know, that's a huge difference. One that no way I expected. I did not think I'd ever see it legal. Not in my lifetime. So, we're there. Are we really there? Not really. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff, but that's another show later down the road. Politically, did I think we'd be here? My 16-year-old self was fairly liberal, fairly left-leaning, but liberal meant a lot different back then. A liberal was anti-war, strong on peace, strong on love and community, but still kind of pie in the eye, just wanting everybody to have their fair shake at the world. Now we're in a society where left is kind of in charge, but it keeps moving left. And that's no blame to liberals. I was a liberal. Parts of me still are liberal. Like I say, I've grown into this enigma that, depending on the subject, depending on the day, depending on things I've just read, my place on the political spectrum jumps all over the place. It doesn't move like this, jumps from spot to spot. It depends on the information, and society has changed. Society is the other thing that my 16-year-old self would be kind of I told you so. It was about the 70s when political correctness was coming about. We hated it. As young kids, we would take the George Carlin route and just be as politically incorrect as possible. And we laughed at it. We said that was going to die. And I worried, and I would be saying to my 16-year-old self, you were right to worry. We're in a world where offense means more than logic. Where when I was 16, you would always hear sticks and stones break bones, but names never hurt you. And nowadays it's don't call names, and you can only call certain names, and some language is even illegal now in Canada. It's a strange change to society. Education is another place where this hippie is confused. It's been 42 years since I've been in school. Yet I go to a school and I'm part of schools for 4 kids and 7 grandkids. Yeah, I can't do that very well. 4 kids and 7 grandkids. I've been, to some of their concerts, to some of their graduations. One of them's 21, 2 of them graduated from high school already. School has not changed. It really has not changed. You would think with a society that has changed so very much technologically that our schools would have reduced the hours that the children need to spend in school or increased what they teach in certain areas. Taxes haven't gone down, but the spending on schools has become ridiculous. And the education is ridiculous. They're still learning how to cryptically write and print. They're still learning now they're learning, I used to know 2 methods of division, long and short, and 1 method of multiplication. My son had to learn 4 methods of multiplication this year, was judged on those 4 methods, and even though his mathematical skills are through the roof, he's like me when it comes to math, he got lower marks because 1 of the 4 methods he wasn't very good at. They say that they're teaching those 4 methods so that students can pick their best and work with that. Well, okay, then don't judge them for when they do poor in one area and good in another. They're supposed to be judged on whether they know math. I agree with understanding mathematics. In a world where your computer does all your math for you, I mean, hey Google, what's 5 times 7?
The answer is 35.
The answer is 35. What the hell do I need to ask my brain for? But I should know simple mathematics. I should understand mathematics. I should understand how to communicate through a pen. But in today's world, we don't do any of that stuff. And I can see in 20, 30 years, we won't do any of that stuff. Yet, schools will still be in the dark ages with pen and paper, having and marking kids down and making their self-confidence worse by telling them they can't seem to do something that nobody does anymore. I'll get off that. The last thing I want to talk about is self-driving cars. No way my 16-year-old self saw that. I thought the future was more Jetsons-like. Flying cars, people flying them though. I'd never thought of autonomous vehicles. I find it amazing, and my 16-year-old self would be so aghast and say, absolutely no way. But knowing what I know about computers and their ability to learn, my 58-year-old self says, autonomous vehicles, bring them on. Bring them on. I'd love to rent one and let it drive me to the mountains so me and the 2 boys could go and throw rocks in the river and smell the beautiful air. I'm all for it. So, progress. Did we progress? We did. Are we progressive? I hate that word. Would my 16-year-old self be able to survive in this environment? Absolutely, and he'd love it, especially the fact that he would be able to do what I'm about to do, and that is go in my backyard, take out my pipe, and have a couple of big tokes while this is loading up. Peace and cheers, friends. Love and harmony. We're not doing a little known fact today because this is a long video. I hope you've stayed to the end. If you have, give me an extra thumbs up. I don't know if you can. Peace and cheers. Love and harmony.